and we are talking about the Indianapolis Colts finishing 9-8 last year. They not as much kind of turnover as far as on their roster. They lost good old Gardner Minshew, great mustache of his. Zach Moss, who is someone I always find myself these past couple of years drafting because he's a good player. Isaiah McKenzie now on the Giants, and Zach Martin, who I don't know who the fuck that is.
It's Jake Martin. You know Zach Martin, but
I
Jake
do know
Martin
Zach Martin. I don't know Zach.
Yeah. You know Zach Martin. But hey, they lost the Gardner, but they brought in the dad of the year last year in Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco, man. Oh man, just seeing his name excites me because of all the alternate passing props that we hit on Joe Flacco coming in.
Yeah, Flacco came in clutch for us those last 4 or 5
off the couch, man. Love Joe Flacco. So he is your backup QB2 there. You got defense tackle Raekwon Davis, linebacker Zaire Franklin, who played very, very well for them. A reason why they were able to get rid of Darius Leonard last year. They picked up Latu, one of my favorite guys in the draft that we talked about. Has a great story. I recommend you look into, if you have not seen, a real cool story of resilience. Some guy who was told he was never going to be able to play football again now was a first-round draft pick in the NFL, living the dream. And then A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, coming over from Texas, a receiver that kind of slots into that starting lineup. So what are your big takeaways for this Indianapolis Colts team?
Yeah, run it back, right? I mean, they barely missed the playoffs last year with Gardner Minshew. It'll be interesting to see what AR can do. I mean, Anthony Richardson was a dude those first 2 or 3 weeks. He just, played the first half and then got injured every single week.
Couldn't finish. Could not finish.
Exactly. But, he should be perfectly fine after that AC surgery or AC joint surgery that he had, right? It was AC joint. Yeah. Yep. So, at this point, we're not going to talk about him nearly as much, most likely, but like, with AC sprain injuries, most players don't have surgery on this. Most players can play through a lot of this stuff. Very, very different amongst quarterbacks. So we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little while. But like I said, they're running it back. They had a fairly decent run at the playoffs last year. Barely missed out. But we'll see what the boys in Indy can do.
Yeah. No, I think it is really set up for Anthony Richardson's success, right? A guy who we talked about last year. I mean, even as a Gator, he was on my top 5 do not draft list because of those health concerns. He looked like a stud. I mean, he impressed me as a Florida Gator fan who watched all of his games at Florida. He really impressed me with what he was able to do both through the air and on the ground in the NFL. It's just, can he stay healthy? Because he is set up for success right now. This team is very well built. I think they're a very well-balanced team. So let's talk about some of those injuries, and we'll start with Mr. Anthony Richardson. Let me turn this off here for a second.
Come on.
Sorry about that. I apologize for the super professionalism. Go
Rookie.
So Anthony Richardson, as Derek mentioned, AC sprain. So AC is your acromioclavicular joint, right? So it connects your clavicle to your acromion, which comes off the back of your shoulder or your scapula. So grade 3, that is kind of that 50-50 range. Are you going to get surgery? Are you not? If, Derek said some guys don't get it because it's more cosmetic. For a lot of players, a la Keenan Allen, go look up a picture of him and his shoulder that looks like it's raised like that because he never got his fixed, right? But for a quarterback's position, it's very different. Throwing mechanics and all that stuff. So 4 to 6 months is typically the expected recovery timeline. He's got 11 months because he injured himself early in October. What are your concerns with Anthony Richardson?
I'm not necessarily concerned at all with his shoulder anymore. Has he changed his mindset as far as being an active running style quarterback? He's one that, yes, he is a bigger, stronger running threat, but as we've noticed, like, he still can't stay healthy. Like, he doesn't have the durability of, that bigger quarterback, at least to this point. So, like you were just saying a little bit ago, with AC sprains with that clavicle running into your scapula, in order for a quarterback to throw a ball, that scapula basically has to be stable, right?
Yeah.
It does move a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, that thing has to be fairly stable for that arm to rotate about it. So once he had surgery, they basically went and locked down that AC joint, and he should be good. But at the same time, like, has he learned over the last 8 months of not playing football? That's the big thing.
I think you hit it nail on the head, man. The shoulder injury itself, right? A lot less concerning for me.
Yeah.
Now, there was people concerned because he was taking rest days and all that stuff that I heard in the offseason is part of a normal progression. The guy was not allowed to throw for several months. Now he's getting back to a throwing program. Yeah, no shit, he's going to be sore. None of that should be a red flag. Any soreness or scheduled rest days, or he's not practicing every day because of the shoulder taking a rest, none of that is concerning to me.
Nope.
What you talked about is absolutely concerning to me. He only finished 50% of the games he started, 2 out of 4, right? That's abysmal. Okay.
Yep.
It's a mindset change. You can't tell a guy that he can't use his legs because that is what makes him dangerous. But
Definitely.
as someone who's going to be running and getting, 10 or so carries a game, you have to learn how to protect yourself. He's a massive dude and he's an athletic freak. I've seen him do backflips all the way across the end zone. But the NFL's different, man. These are just grown ass men. And you've got to learn to, whether it's get down or run out of bounds or do whatever you can, that, hey, take the Tyler Lockett way out. It does not matter how big you are. As the quarterback, you have a giant target on your back. Guys are going to be looking to inflict pain onto you. So, I really hope that he has had a little change in mindset. I'm not calling for Anthony Richardson to not run the ball because that's what makes him Anthony Richardson. But he does need to learn how to protect himself going forward into the season.
Yeah, all right. No, I mean, like you said, I think hopefully he made a call to one Andrew Luck or somebody that did scamper around a little bit back in the day, that for the most part until the very end stayed fairly healthy.
No, I think that's a great call. All right, some other guys we're going to rattle off here a little bit quicker. Dallas Flowers, cornerback for them. He kind of busted on the scene last year before he tore his Achilles, unfortunately. He's got 11 months to come back from we talked about Achilles tear, complete tear of that tendon that connects your calf muscle to your heel. It's about a 10 to 12 month recovery process. He's at about 11 months. Good part is they brought in Jalen Jones, who's slated to start in front of him. So I don't think he's going to be pushed into action right away. And I wouldn't expect him 100% to start week 1. Any difference in opinion there?
Nope, not at all.
And then a couple other guys, Michael Pittman, he picked up a minor knee injury. He basically banged knees with someone at OTAs. He was held out of minicamp. It seems to be a massive precaution. They were saying if he could practice, it was during the season. I think this is much more of, they just paid him as a wide receiver 1. They want to kind of, there's no rush. Any concerns with Pittman?
Nope, he's the dude. They're just being cautious.
Yep. And then lastly, Braden Smith, right tackle. He had a knee scope where they basically go in and clean some things up on the knee. He didn't want to release a lot of details on it. A lot of this stuff is kind of up to the player, how much they want to release in the offseason. So, basically said he had a nagging injury and he was looking to clean some stuff up, whether it be cartilage, things like that. He's got about 6.5 months from the surgery in February. Typically, sometimes 3 to 4 months it takes. I would expect him to be back for training camp. What are you thinking as far as a big piece of this offensive line?
Yeah, no, I think he'll probably be perfectly fine. He's got the time to recover, and most likely this has been bothering him for quite some time. So most likely, probably second half, maybe most of the season, who knows? He's dealing with this nagging knee injury, so he's probably better off right now than he was the last 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks of the season last year.
Yep, precisely. When we talk about long-term health, what do they do in there? What do they have to remove? That's a little concerning for somebody, but we're talking about next season. I think next season it's a little more optimistic for a guy like this. Indeed. So we're going to hit some quick fantasy takeaways because I think we're aligned here. Basically, for us, I don't know if either of us are willing to pull the trigger on Anthony Richardson at QB6. with a little bit of concerns. I don't know. Are you willing to take that risk with some of his injury concerns? Or are you staying away right now?
It's really tricky, especially with the ceiling that Anthony Richardson has is a top 3 quarterback, right? Because of his legs.
Top 1. I mean,
shit. I'm right. Exactly. I mean, he could be the difference between a chip and, missing your fantasy playoffs. But at the end of the day, like, he's going around somebody like a Joe Burrow. So could you wait and probably get a more, seasoned guy in Joe Burrow or somebody even further down? Because, I mean, there's some other good options around him too. I think Mark Andrews might be right there, and I'm expecting big things out of him at the tight end position. So, it really just depends on how far he slips, whether I would take him. I would probably lean away from Anthony Richardson in the fantasy realm.
Yeah, I would take the more conservative route. I cannot argue with someone who tells me they lay out a path for him to be, a top 3, a top 1 quarterback in fantasy this season.
Yeah.
I just have never seen him, going back to high school, stay healthy for an entire season. So that's just with me. I wish the best for him. I loved watching him at the University of Florida. I hope it happens. It's just my head logically is telling me it's unlikely. So, and if you're going to if you're going to spend that draft capital, it better pay off. The other guys, Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor. I think Michael Pittman is the clear alpha wide receiver on this team. I think we're aligned on that. And then Jonathan Taylor, it's, what are we going to see from him? Are we going to see, something like the past couple of years where he struggled and kind of had issues with staying on the field? Or are we going to see the Jonathan Taylor of old where he just looks like an absolute stud? What are your opinions on Jonathan Taylor?
Again, it's really tough. I think Jonathan Taylor's gonna have a pretty good year. I think the contract issues and all that kind of stuff is behind him. I think he's a little bit more focused going into this season than the past season or two. But like you said, it's been a couple years since we've really seen that number 1 running back in JT. So would I spend that, top 6, top 8 pick on Jonathan Taylor? Maybe. I mean, it's really tough.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Jonathan Taylor, actually. Looking at when he came into the league, 2020, almost 1,200 yards, 2021, 1,800 yards, and then kind of just not had the game, the amount of games played, right? He's been similar in yards per game. Past couple of years, he's just not played the amount of games. I think that he's set up for a really good season. I think Anthony Richardson and his style of play does help Jonathan Taylor.
So and he still has that solid offensive line and Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith and all those guys. But, it's really just, are they going to start to switch their offense around now that they got AR back there that can run and do some crazy things with his legs?
Mm-hmm.
It's TBD. We didn't get to see it last year.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get it over to the betting realm. Why don't you, I believe it is your turn to kick us off, correct?
It is. Yeah. So, with the Colts, I really do like Anthony Richardson to have a pretty good year. And really, I was actually kind of surprised at how low his passing yards were listed. And who knows if the books are putting injury into consideration here, but his number's at 3,200. And I think, that's barely that's under 200 yards a game. If he plays 17 games. Now, is that likely? Probably not from what we've been talking about, but he does have some solid weapons at wide receiver in AD Mitchell, Downs and Pittman Jr. I think he hits this pretty easily, really. I think the only way that he doesn't is if he misses a massive amount of the season, just like last year.
I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, you have the health and the amount of games played, but Gardner Minshew hit that number last year. So, obviously, he didn't start every game.
And I think it was in like 11 games, 12 games, something like that. So, maybe it was a little bit more. But anyways, the other one that I like is Michael Pittman. he is their alpha wide receiver, and his touchdown number is only at 5.5. So I do like him to go over 5.5 touchdowns. Yeah.
Oh wow, I'm surprised they only had 4 last year. Okay.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it's Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
Or are we expecting as much out of Gardner Minshew rather than Anthony Richardson? I probably wouldn't, even though somehow Gardner Minshew did end up going to the Pro Bowl last year. I don't know how that was.
He did.
I don't know how that was a thing, but
the Pro Bowl is the biggest.
I think they let him in for his jorts and his mustache.
Yeah, maybe it was. That's such a joke, man. All right, so going over to my best bets here. So your 9-8 Colts last year with a win total of 8.5. Starting off very simple. I'm going over 8.5 wins at -105 for this Colts team. I am pretty high on this Colts team. I think they're a balanced team. I like both their offense and defense. There are a little bit of concerns with health, but on paper, this is a really good team. I think that they're going to put some things together. I was surprised they went 9-8 last year. Not a lot went right for them. I think they're a better team. This is actually one of my easier bets as far as how I see it playing out. Again, they won 9 games last year. They improved a lot. Even, we saw worst case scenario with their quarterback going out. I think Joe Flacco showed us, hey, if AR can't stay healthy, he can be capable. He led the Browns into the playoffs there. So I like them there. I also like them to make the playoffs at +140. So obviously where I differ here is I'm not very big on Jacksonville. I think Tennessee maybe a little bit improved, but not much. But I think the Colts really take a step forward here. They make the playoffs at +140. And then my final bet for them kind of all ties in. Top 2 teams in this division, Houston and Indianapolis at +210. Really, it's a fate of Jacksonville, and it's really thinking that Indianapolis and Houston are better teams, top to bottom, than the Jacksonville Jaguars. So those are my 3. They're all pretty correlated in the fact that, hey, I think Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Downs, and the rookie Mitchell are solid. I think the offensive line has started to gel towards the end of this year. I think Anthony Richardson is able to stay a little bit more healthy. And I think that defense is a sneaky good defense with guys like EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin, Kwity Paye, Juju Brents, Julian Backman, a lot of guys that maybe the casual NFL fan does not know, but are really, really solid players on that defensive side of the ball. So those are my bets.